Hello and welcome to 30 Minute Thursday. My name is Amit. It is 2 p.m. in the beautiful summer-like Pacific Northwest. We are live on Facebook after many weeks of an absence. I'm so sorry I missed you guys. I was on vacation. I was traveling through Europe and Israel, visiting family, visiting some of the most beautiful countries and capitals on the planet. We were in Vienna. We were in Prague, we were in Budapest, we were in Bratislava, just a beautiful part of the world. The weather was excellent, as I see the weather is really spectacular here in the Northwest as well, but it was great to see things. It was great to travel, great to visit family, and it's also great to be home. So here we are, and wow, I missed you guys, and I do apologize, like I say, for being gone. It was a long absence, and in my time away, I got a chance to get caught up on some reading. I got a chance to get caught up on what's going on in the world. We did a lot of sightseeing, of course. There was beer drinking. Now, the European nations are not huge fans of bourbon, but they definitely know their way around beer. And we had a very good time. So I'm back and I'm not traveling for a while, so I will continue our updates and I'll continue bringing you information about the economy, about what's going on in the real estate markets, what's going on in the mortgage world, even though I was gone and not doing a lot of broadcasts because the time zones were brutal. 9 hours ahead in Europe, so that puts us at 11 o'clock at night, and in Israel, 10 hours ahead, putting us at midnight, and probably not in my best state to do that. So, but I'm back now and I'm going to be spending more time with you guys and sharing more information and more insight. And boy, there's a lot going on. I did bring my my reading with me, like I said, so I kept up on what's going on in the economy, kept up on what's going on with mortgage interest rates and everything else. And I do apologize. I am still a bit jet lagged. That's part of the price. Excuse me. That's part of the price we pay for these sorts of adventures. But I'll do my best to give you as much energy as I got and as much information as I have. So let's just jump right in with both feet and let's talk about what's going on in the economy, what's going on with the recession that's coming, what's going on with mortgage interest rates, unemployment, inflation, lots to catch up on. So let me just start by saying that today, in fact, there was initial jobless claims numbers were released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, this is a really interesting proposition here because over the last several weeks, if not months, we have been watching things trending in a certain direction. And that trend has been that the smart money is saying that a recession is coming. The smart money is saying that the Fed is trying to create a recession. Honestly, that's what it looks like. And that's what they've said. And they're trying to stimulate unemployment. They're trying to create unemployment as a way of helping tame inflation. So by having a recession and by having higher unemployment, what the Fed's plans are is to reduce the amount of money that's available. And by reducing the amount of money that's available to you and to me and to companies and things of that nature, other people, then people will spend less money. And by spending less money, prices will come down and inflation will come down as a result of that. That's kind of like the big 30,000-foot plan for the Fed. And they've been trying to help that along by increasing their short-term interest rates. So they're making the cost of money very expensive, and that leads to certain things happening. For example, companies are laying off, they're not hiring. If they are hiring, they're not giving signing bonuses, they're not giving huge retention bonuses right now. That's part of the plan of the Fed. And that's been working, sort of. It's been happening slowly but surely. It's kind of like 2 steps up and 1 step back. Every time they do these things, we see certain things happening. The rate of inflation is kind of being brought down year over year. The Fed wants, as a target, the Fed wants 2% year over year inflation. We're somewhere in the high 4s, low 5s right now. So they've clearly haven't achieved all the goals yet, but keep in mind that we were somewhere in the 9s a year ago. So when you start to think about, wow, that's a big change. Yes, they've been doing good things. And and good thing. Sorry, that's the jet lag speaking. They've been doing their thing, whether you call it good or bad, but they've been doing their thing to kind of create the outcome that they want to bring inflation down. Now, the problem is that it hasn't been completely seamless and it hasn't been completely smooth. And there have been some really sticky parts of that. And one of those sticky things over the last few weeks, if not couple of months, has been employment/unemployment. And I've put it out in emails to people and in things that I write to folks, newsletters and things like that, that, you know, these unemployment numbers are, it looks like the books are cooked. It looks like the way they're reporting these things, the way they are providing information. When I say they, I'm talking about agencies like the Bureau of Labor Statistics and other government bureaucracies that tabulate these things. It just looks like they're cooking the books. And we've had conversations in the past where I've mentioned to you that they have restated numbers that, you know, from a month ago or from 2 months ago, where a while back, I believe it was in April, they restated numbers from April of 2022. So like an entire year ago, they're like, yeah, we missed that mark here. And so we had to clean up the numbers and whatnot. And just from an outsider looking in, look, I'm not a statistician. I do very basic math in the course of my job as a mortgage originator, and I'm very comfortable with the math that I do, but I don't know how these large statistics are tabulated and gathered and all the things that go into that. So I give people a lot of leeway and I give individuals a lot of grace. I don't give a lot of grace to government agencies. I think they've got all sorts of people involved there. Some of them are good, some of them are not good, and they've got their own initiatives and they've got their own process. And anyone who's been caught in the bureaucracy, one of the places that we visited was the city of Prague, which is the birthplace and the home of a writer named Franz Kafka. And Franz Kafka wrote about, you know, people being crushed under this like completely unintelligent, unmoving, unthinking kind of government bureaucracy. So got a little of that in my head right now. But, you know, these agencies came up with all sorts of calculations to share, hey, unemployment still super low. Hey, we've got this record low unemployment rate. And they've been doing that for the past several months, or kind of moving the data around a little bit to make it look as if we've got that low unemployment. And it just didn't make sense, right? It didn't match what we're seeing with the rest of the world. Like we're reading about companies, really strong companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook and Microsoft with hiring freezes and layoffs and things like that. And here comes the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying record low unemployment. And like one of these is not right. And so it was just a weird sort of thing. But and because it was weird, and because it was coming from government agencies and government entities, the markets had to take that into consideration. And so we're looking at markets that are still calculating a strong strong employment outlook on the one hand, and a weakening economic outlook on the other hand. And they're like, we just don't know how to make sense of all this stuff. And that impacts mortgage interest rates, that impacts the stock market, which is still doing really, really great, all things being equal, even though mortgage interest rates have been kind of on the higher side than we'd like to see them. All of these things had to kind of come into balance. And today, in fact, earlier this morning, the Bureau of Labor Statistics finally started releasing information that an initial jobless claims, meaning that people who are filing for unemployment for the first time, not the first time in their lives, the first time in a while, right? So all of a sudden, these numbers have started to go up. All of a sudden, we're starting to see a kind of balancing of what we see with our own eyes, what we're reading, what we're hearing, what we see with these companies and with these large employers, and suddenly the government statisticians are catching up and saying, yeah, that's actually more correct. Earlier in the week, they released some information as well. And let me give you an idea of how they cooked the books. or how they bake the numbers, or whatever it is that they do to these things. They released numbers and they said, yeah, unemployment is record low. We've got, a huge amount of people employed and everything else. Great. What they didn't tell you is that the hours that these people are working have come way down. So yes, technically they're still employed. Technically, that statistic of unemployment, that headline number, 3 point whatever, 3.6, 3.5, 3.7% unemployment. Yes, that's technically correct and accurate. But those people are not working as many hours. And as a result of those people not working as many hours, they're actually not making as much money because a lot of people are paid hourly, right? And so all of a sudden, you can start to see like, okay, so you're telling me that there's full employment, but the people that are employed aren't making the incomes and the earnings and don't have the spending power that they had a year ago or 2 years ago. So is it really full employment, or are you kind of slicing and dicing the numbers to make it look better on paper? Well, there's only so long that you can slice and dice the numbers. Eventually, reality comes home. Eventually, the vacation is over, the party's over, you got to come home, you got to face the jet lag, you got to do the laundry, and you got to get back to work. And I think in honest terms, from these government statisticians, today was a turning point because they finally released information that started to make sense to show that, like, yes, in fact, first-time jobless claims have spiked up, meaning that we're finally, I don't mean to say that in a good way, like, oh, I'm so relieved that people are finally starting to lose their jobs. I'm not, but I know that this was the approach, this is the process, this is what the plan is to reduce inflation. And so we are seeing that start to take hold. We're seeing that start to actually have an impact on the economy, on employment. That was one of the really last holdouts as far as what the Fed was trying to do over here and the results over here. These two were not in synchronicity, and it was the employment or the unemployment information that was really tough for the markets to swallow. All of a sudden, the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, kind of turned a corner and released information today that made it look like, okay, we're starting to see things line up and synchronize. Now, we've got a long way to go, right? And I again, don't let the smile fool you. I'm not happy that people are going to lose their jobs. I know that they will lose their jobs. I know that there is a recession coming, and this is part of what's expected. This is part of what the Fed is trying to do, and they want to create that in order to fight inflation. Now, we can talk all day long about the proprietary of that and boom and bust cycles and all these other things, but from an immediate perspective, this is all this is a feature, not a bug. This is what's coming. I was in Europe, and I just today or yesterday was reading that the European central banks and their statisticians are now actually releasing information that shows 2 successive quarters of negative gross domestic product for the European markets. That traditionally has been what we use to define a recession. Now, we had that in the US a while back, and there was all sorts of hemming and hawing about, well, that's not really a recession, and let's define negative GDP growth and all the rest of that stuff. Mark Twain said it best: there's lies, damned lies, and statistics. And we can torture the numbers until they give us the results that we want. But recessions are bigger than localized. And when we start to see things coming out of Europe, when we start to see numbers coming out of Europe, when we start to see information on the global picture kind of supporting and reflecting what it is that we're expecting in the first place, we're getting confirmation. Now, slow economies move slowly. I've said this time and again, these are not jet skis. They're not speedboats. These are huge ocean-going container ships. They take a long time to turn. And so we are going to see this unfolding over months still to come, but it's starting to happen. And that's important because we need low inflation in order to get lower interest rates for mortgages. And I've spoken to you guys about this ad infinitum. I'm not going to bore you with that information right now, although I am happy to review that later on. And I'm sure that I'll talk about it again in the coming weeks as we get back on track with our 30-minute Thursdays. But we're starting to see these things now. Big numbers coming out next week. Very, very important stuff is happening next week. More information is being released. We've got the consumer price index and the producers price index is coming out next week. The CPI, the consumer price index, is really the big one. The PPI, the producers price index, is kind of like the Rodney Dangerfield of these economic reports. I don't know if you remember the comedian, he was brilliant, but he would say, I get no respect, right? Well, the PPI, the producers price index, gets no respect among statisticians and economists because with producers, basically, we're talking about the raw materials, the cost of raw goods and materials that goes into the things that we consume, whatever those things may be. Now, in production, sometimes they can absorb those rising costs, and sometimes they pass that on to the consumer through the cost of these rising goods. But when we talk about the CPI, the consumer price index, that is definitely something that can move the markets. And we're expecting a consumer price index number to start really trending down. There are multiple components of the CPI, the consumer price index. One of them is the cost of shelter, namely rents and the equivalent of rents. And I'm too jet lagged, and it's been a little while since we've had a conversation, so I will not bore you with all the details of how they calculate the equivalent of rent. But rent is one of those things, like when you sign a lease, you're doing it for 6 months, 12 months. Very few people sign month-to-month leases or quarterly leases. So it takes time for rents to kind of shake out over 12 months. But we have seen rents come down over the months, and we've seen the cost of shelter come down over the months. And that's important because in the consumer price index, 43% of this total number is made up of the component cost of rent. And so when you see rents coming down, that's, let's call it 2/5 of the entire number is impacted by just that one component. So that's a really big deal. And we are going to see more and more of that kind of mellowing out and coming down. The other component that we're looking at right now that's really interesting is used cars. And those things are also expected to come down pretty significantly. So as we see the consumer price index come down, and as we see unemployment go up, what's going to happen is that the rate of inflation, the way it's being tabulated, is going to start to reflect the outcome and the cumulative efforts of the Fed to have raised the rates over the last, heaven knows, since March of 2022, they've basically raised the interest rates every time they've met. Every 6 weeks, the Fed meets. Every time since March of 2022, they've raised the rates. And so eventually, we're going to get to a point where the cost of money has become so expensive that people are not hiring. People are not buying new cars or used cars. People are not traveling as much, and so on and so forth. And all of these things cumulative will have a number, will add up to a number, and that's going to be the year-over-year rate of inflation. And as that comes down, the markets are going to respond favorably, and they're going to place more and more value on mortgage-backed securities, the instruments that I create with our clients, and mortgage interest rates will come down. They're not there yet. In fact, they've been jumping all over the place of late because all these numbers that have come out that have been kind of skewed, including the unemployment numbers, have just been giving the markets a lot of heartburn because, you have to believe what the government's telling you. I mean, you don't have to, probably best that you don't, but at the same time, that's what they're telling you. And this is the government. And so the markets and honest brokers are going to look at that and say, well, these are the data points that I'm working with. Now, that's starting to come down. That's starting to change. And we shall see in the coming months what's going to happen. Next week on Thursday, I will be here. Yes, I will be here. And I will tell you what happened on the consumer price index, which is coming out on the 13th, and on the producers price index, which I believe is coming out on the 14th. Don't quote me on that. But on the 15th, I will do another 30-minute Thursday and I will tell you what is happening and what to expect. And hopefully we'll see the markets continuing to respond favorably, and we'll see mortgage interest rates continue to come down. We really want to see that happen. However, on the other hand, let's talk about what's going on in the real estate market, because inventory is at an all-time low. I mean, really, especially if you're in the Pacific Northwest, all-time low. And as a result of that, guess what? Housing values have begun to appreciate. Now, I know that there are a lot of people that have been sitting around waiting since 2022, thinking that we're going to see another major correction in the housing market, and they're going to be able to jump in and buy real estate super cheap, just like was available after the collapse of 2008. And I understand that desire, even though I think it's rooted in a misunderstanding. But it's not coming, not in this way, not in residential real estate. There are other components of the real estate world that may have an impact on residential real estate values, lending. There's other things to talk about, and we'll talk about commercial real estate, specifically the office markets, in the coming weeks. I promise you we'll talk about that, because everything's connected. But as far as housing values go, just earlier this week, the Case-Shiller and other organizations that track the value of real estate. Zillow is one of them, Black Knight's one of them, Case-Shiller is one of them, FHFA is one of them for the government. All of them are showing residential real estate values trending up. So now they do these things month over month. So we're looking at like a 0.4% increase in value, or a 1% increase in value. A lot of these things are based on how these institutions collect data, how they represent data. That's why you've got a disparity between one and the other, by the way they report this information. But the upside, the information that I'm trying to share with you guys, is that residential real estate is showing appreciation of value, even with interest rates on mortgages somewhere, in the high 6s, low to mid 7s. Guess what? People are still buying real estate. People are still writing competitive offers. They're writing offers that are escalating above asking price. They're doing these things that we saw them doing in 2021, and there's no inventory, none, zero, almost none, non-existent. And so as a result of that, we're seeing nationwide real estate values appreciating. So all you folks who are sitting there thinking, I'm waiting for the collapse so I can pay 50 cents on the dollar and buy real estate cheap, I don't think you're going to be happy. It's not going to happen, not the way you expect it to. Something may happen, something may be out there in the commercial real estate space, no question about it. There's some weird stuff going on, but residential real estate, huge demand, almost non-existent supply, value and appreciation is going up. In fact, the smart money is predicting somewhere around 4 to 6% annual appreciation for 2023, meaning that it will be 5% higher. I'm just going to round and say 5% higher at the end of 2023 than it was at the end of 2022. So we can take all of these expectations of residential real estate collapse, and I'd say we should throw them off to the side, because it's not happening. And I'll tell you one more thing as I'm looking. Yes, we've got time. One more thing to consider here. Right now, mortgage interest rates are still higher than we'd like them to be. High 6s, low to mid, that jet lag's tricky, low to middle 7s. Yes, you heard me correctly. But as inflation comes down, as the markets digest all this information, mortgage interest rates will come down as well. Guess what's going to happen? I've said it before, I continue to say it, I'm warning you now, because if you're sitting on the sidelines, your window is rapidly shrinking, because once these interest rates turn the corner and they start with a 5 again, after they've been at 6 or 7 for a while, everybody who's been sitting on their hands waiting for an opportunity to come into the market is going to come into the market. And then all of a sudden, we're going to see a huge appreciation, especially in markets like the Pacific Northwest, where we don't have a lot of inventory, where we hardly ever have a lot of inventory, and where there's still a ton of demand, a ton of millennial families. That's who's driving a lot of this demand right now, who are getting even the, who are earning good money, even despite the fact that we've got economic disruption and we've got employment disruption and things like that, they're still making good money, and they're still going to be out there buying residential real estate because they need a place to raise their growing family. And that does not care about your desires to have a 2008 style collapse so that you can buy real estate cheap. Those folks are going to be jumping in the market with both feet. And that's going to happen. I can't say it's going to happen tomorrow, but I will tell you that it's coming. And the sooner we get on top of this, if you want to buy a home, your window is closing rapidly because there's just nothing to buy out here. And you're going to be writing offer after offer after offer with escalation clauses and with all sorts of crazy bids above asking just to try to get the seller's attention when all these other potential buyers wake up, realize that interest rates have come down, and jump into the market. So things are percolating, things are coming. I have returned home. I'm tanned. I'm somewhat rested, not really. I'm jet lagged, but I am ready. And I'm ready to talk with you guys individually or as a group, with your real estate broker, with your significant other, with your family, with your friends, with whatever. But if you're thinking about buying a home, now is the time to jump in there. Beat the rush and let's refinance later. That all said, if you've already bought a home and you're paying interest rates that you're not thrilled about, we're going to be talking in the next several months, because I do envision that mortgage interest rates will keep coming down and we're going to see some great refinance opportunities as well. All these things are turning, all these things are percolating, and they will be coming. So I'm going to make you a promise. I'll be here. I will share more information with you. I will try to make it as concise as possible. I'll try to be as not jet lagged as possible, but I am available. So please, please, please find me on Facebook, call me, email me, DM me, whatever it is, PM, whatever. Let's talk. Let's figure out an opportunity here, because I am still a huge believer in real estate. One last thing before I say goodbye. Having traveled to all these other countries, I was in Israel visiting family. I was in Austria visiting family. I was in both the Czech Republic and Slovakia, as well as Hungary. Nobody in the world offers 30-year fixed rate mortgages, with the exception of the good old US of A. Nobody, I was talking to people who buy real estate, sell real estate, invest in real estate. Nobody offers a 30-year fixed rate mortgage except for us. We have this most amazing opportunity here to buy real estate, finance it over 30 years, typically with a low interest rate or a lower interest rate than what some of these other countries are generating. And it's a guaranteed low interest rate for 30 years. It's never going to change. Yeah, the taxes might go up, the insurance might go up, but your principal and interest payment will never change. That is a huge, huge advantage that we have that all of these other countries do not enjoy. So I promise you, I'll be back next week. We'll talk more. I'll give you information about the PPI, the CPI, the economy, and everything else, unemployment as well. And until then, I want to thank you guys for joining me. I want to apologize one more time for being gone for so long, although it was a fabulous trip. And I want to wish you guys a great weekend. Get out there and enjoy the beautiful sunshine, especially if you're in the Pacific Northwest. Stay safe. Stay healthy, stay sane, and I will see you next week. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Have a great day. Bye-bye.